What's up, y'all? Um, I want to give a short little story about the difference between living in LA County and living in Riverside County. If you're from Southern California and you lived in the IE or LA, you know the culture. You know how it is. When you're in LA County, you got to watch what you wear. Not only the colors, but the logos as well. You know, certain things can attract certain gang members and you will get pressed. So you got to watch what colors you wear and what sports teams you wear while you're in the city. In the IE, gangs are still pretty active out there, even though it's not as much gangs. But Moreno Valley, for example, grew into Murder Vow. They call it Murder Vow now. It wasn't Murder Vow back then. Even when it was active and there was some active gangs, the gangs I knew about mainly, like real gangs in Moreno Valley, was Edgemont and Donor Block. I'm sure there were some other gangs too, but those are the two main ones I knew of in the early 90s up until 2000 and 2001 when I graduated. Edgemont and Donor Block was probably the most feared gangs in Moreno Valley. But over time, cliques started, guys starting cliques or whatever. So, there was certain cliques. When I was coming up, there was cliques like Mecca World. Like the clothing, Mecca, but it was a meaning to it. Macking every color coochie around. That was Mecca World. There was other cliques. Japan Clan. And Japan Clan means just a pretty ass nigga creeping low and nasty. Japan Clan. Just a pretty ass nigga creeping low and nasty. And then it was a clique called X-Rated. I had a couple of homies from X-Rated and Japan Clan, but I never was a part of it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you could say I rode with them and if they had any problems, I would have been there to help them solve it. But I was never going to be claiming a clique, that was mainly focused on being a player, being a playboy, and having a lot of sex orgies with girls. I wasn't a part of that. I didn't get down like that. And I saw some of the cats that was a part of these cliques doing some real weird stuff. A lot of F-boy stuff. I wouldn't rock with that. I was a totally different breed. Me and my brothers was a totally different breed. We started art, even though we had the best of both worlds, LA and the Valley, but I was not going to take on some of that Valley behavior, So LA is more about respect and territory. No matter where you at, you need to show respect, whether it's to somebody's turf or to that person, that individual person, when you come across them. And also the territory thing. People are very territorial in LA, especially if they're part of a gang. So you gotta, don't try to be tough when you in somebody else's territory, even though they don't own that block, they don't pay, some of them don't even pay bills on that block. But in their mind, this is their block and their territory. And you got to make sure that you respect the territory or you will get pressed. And if you be disrespectful, you might not make it home. In the Valley, back then it was more about how many girls you can get and what kind of, your gear, what's your, they call it drip now, but we call it gear back then. You know what I'm saying? What kind of gear do you have on? You check the tag, see what name brand you wearing. So in the Valley, it was more about being player, you know what I'm saying? Fashion, and having the best name brand stuff. But I struggled, my brothers and I, we struggled with both because when we were in LA, We was always getting in fights. It was always somebody trying to try us, so we was always in something. When we were in the valley, we didn't really get into too many fights like that. We might have had some issues. I got in a couple of fights in the valley, but most of my fights was always in the city. You know what I'm saying? But I just couldn't rock with the playboy F-boy behavior from some of my homies in the valley. You know, the ones that moved from LA to the valley, they kind of kept that same LA mentality, and they would try to bring that LA culture to the valley. It wasn't the best thing, because it hurt a lot of the community. That's how Moreno Valley turned into Murder Val, because LA niggas was bringing that LA street culture to Moreno Valley, and it was more murders, more homicides in the valley. In Riverside, there's a lot of other gangs too, but when I was back then, the main gangs that was in Riverside, which is the next city to Moreno Valley, the next door city to Moreno Valley, it was a well-known Mexican gang called Eastside Rivas. And they had big beef with 1200 Block Crip. So 1200 Block Crip was a black gang, and Eastside Rivas was a Mexican gang, and they would go at it a lot in Riverside. But I'm sure over time it got worse, and other gangs that probably was already there, or that probably were formed in the aftermath, maybe later on in the 90s and early 2000s. Now it's probably a big thing in Riverside too, but I think it's a little worse in Moreno Valley, because Moreno Valley, almost everybody and their mama moved to the valley. If you didn't move to Chino, if you didn't move to Victorville, Corona, Upland, Banning, Beaumont, you was in Moreno Valley. So everybody and their mama moved to Moreno Valley if they lived in LA. If they didn't move to Moreno Valley, they moved to like Chino, Ontario, or they just moved, out of the state. But usually it was mainly the Inland Empire. But unfortunately, a lot of these kids are running wild now because the parents failed them. A lot of parents who came up in the city, and the parents from the valley, failed these kids because they didn't lay the foundation in the aftermath of what they experienced, as youngsters. Because I can say that in the early 90s up until the late 90s, Moreno Valley was a great city, man. It was an awesome city, a big old melting pot. I have friends of all races really out there, so to me, that was paradise away from my, my paradise away from my original home, LA. But Moreno Valley is just as much as my home as LA is. But I'm very disappointed that Moreno Valley turned into Murder Val. And if I was there, I'll be trying to do something to try to help to change the communities and get these young men out of the mindset of just crashing out and trying to fight each other, But I'm proud of where I'm from. I'm proud of how I've turned out as a man. I'm not a perfect man. I'm not saying I was never in trouble or I never did nothing wrong. I did a lot of things wrong, but I learned from my lessons, and I also had boundaries around things I would do because my parents were hard on us. My mom was hardcore, and my dad was no nonsense, if that makes sense. My mom was hardcore, cutthroat, meaning tough love. She wasn't going to just give us everything we wanted. She gave us everything we needed, and anything we wanted, we had to earn it, which that's how it should be. My father, he was always in LA, so when we were living in the valley with my mom and my stepdad at the time, when we were with my dad was just always trying to remind us to, of the main things to do as young men: be respectful, work hard, don't settle for less, don't take shortcuts in life, all of that stuff, But my dad took more of the calm, laid back approach to us, even though when he needed to get on us, he got on us. But my mom she was to be a mother and a woman raising three boys, she did an excellent job. She made sure that we weren't going to be soft, but she also made sure we weren't going to be no bullies or no crash outs. So both of my parents did a good job, especially my mother because we was around her mostly. But I can't say that every parent around my generation and around the cities that I was in did a great job with their kids. Kids gonna make mistakes. You can't blame the parents for the mistakes that the kids make, but you can blame the parents for the neglect and the things they failed to do to instill some certain morals and values and some discipline and respect in these kids. And that's what's mainly missing now. Nobody respects anybody. These kids don't have really their parents holding them down like that and holding them accountable. And these kids feel entitled to everything. So when they don't get their way, they crash out and they wild out. While these parents are working overtime to try to just defend their babies and make excuses for why their babies are out of control. Fathers too. I mean, the fathers are the main ones I hold accountable because, especially when it comes to these boys, you need some male structure. You need some fatherly figure men in these boys' lives to keep them balanced and keep them from losing their minds out here. Mothers can't do it on their own. Mothers can't teach boys how to be men. Mothers can do the best they can to raise their young boys to be men and tell them what they need to do and what they better not do. But it takes a male to not only put some fear in these boys, but also remind them that the world don't revolve around them and remind them that if they don't do certain things, they're going to pay the ultimate price. But shout out to Moreno Valley. Shout out to the whole Inland Empire. And shout out to LA and the whole LA County. But let's do better. We can do a whole lot better. It starts in the home first. So ask yourself, are you laying the foundation in your home to make sure that when your child is out in the streets, out and about, away from your supervision, your child is not being a danger to society or a menace to society? So is your child helping the communities, or is your child helping destroy the communities? It's on you, parents.